Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to film this video because it is one that I have been anticipating for so long to make, because as most of you know, if you've been following me, I recently moved to Dallas about a month and a half ago, and God has done amazing things in my life to even get me here, and how he provided for me, and how he gave me the confirmations, and how he gave me the signs, and how he opened doors. And I'm just so excited to share my second moving testimony with y'all in hopes that it will encourage those who are seeking confirmation to move where God has been speaking to you about. So if you guys have been following my channel for a while, you know that God had moved me to Nashville. That's where I just moved from before I moved to Dallas. And I thought that Nashville was my promised land. I thought that that was the land that was gonna be flowing with milk and honey. I had just started going into ministry, and I had no really idea that I was about to go through this long wilderness season in Nashville. And I'm so grateful for that season, because I would not have the wisdom and experience that I now have in my actual promised land in Dallas. So I'm just so excited to share this testimony with you guys. So backstory, how I just said that I thought Nashville was my promised land. I had no idea the wilderness journey, but had I known what was up ahead, because God always knows what he's doing, had I known what was up ahead, I probably would have never even stepped out in faith to move to Nashville in the first place, because God knows how to encourage us to go somewhere without giving us the whole entire plan, without showing us what's up ahead, because he will know that we will get too scared and we will not go if we knew what was up ahead, if we knew the wilderness season that he was about to take us on. And so that season was necessary for God to train me, and I wouldn't be where I am now or have the faith that I do now had God not trained me in that season. And I want to read something to you. So I lived off of this verse the entire time that I was in my Nashville wilderness season, and it's Deuteronomy 8:2. And I'm going to read it to you because maybe you're in this season right now. I know how sometimes people don't even watch my moving videos or testimony videos until like months later or a year down the road. So maybe this verse will speak to you. But it says, "Remember that the Lord your God led you on the entire journey these 40 years in the wilderness, so that he might humble you and test you to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you by letting you go hungry, then he gave you manna to eat, which you and your ancestors had not known, so that you might learn that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Your clothing did not wear out and your feet did not swell these 40 years. Keep in mind that the Lord your God has been disciplining you just as a man disciplines his son." And that's just so good, because God really, truly humbled me and tested me. Just like how he said, he allowed you to go hungry and then gave you manna to eat. He was doing this to the Israelites to test them, to train them, to humble them. And that's exactly what God did for me in my Nashville season. Sometimes, you guys, I literally had $1 in my account. I did not know how I was going to eat food, but God provided and gave me his daily bread and sustained me every single day. There were times where I was 2 months late to a car payment, and guess what? God positioned me for a glory setup and showed me that he provided for me. I never had anyone else pay a bill for me. God literally was my provider, and in that season was necessary so that I could depend and trust on God and know that he is my provider. So I never shared, when I was in Nashville, I never shared about what I was really going through when I was in Nashville, but I guess God showed it for this video. So I was living in this apartment in Nashville. I had moved into this like luxury, nicer apartment that God had told me to move into. And I was really worried because, as you guys know, being in ministry, you don't have a salary, you don't have a set amount of money that you're making. You are literally depending on God every single day for your finances, every single day on how you're gonna pay your rent, how you're gonna pay your car payment, how you're even gonna buy your dog food. There are some days where I'm like, I don't even know how I'm gonna buy Brody, my dog, food. And God just kept showing me that I didn't need to worry. And I'm so grateful for that season, because I would not have the faith that I do now that he is my provider and that he will never not be able to provide for me. So when I moved into this one apartment, I knew that the rent was high, and I was like, okay, God, if you are really calling me there, then I know that you will provide the finances. And this rent alone was like $1,800, including utilities. And I prayed about that for over like 6 months before I even moved into the apartment complex. Before that, I was sleeping on my friend's couch, sleeping on an air mattress. And I prayed about this place because it was such an open door. It was such a blessing. And you know, right before I had moved into that place, I had just met a new girlfriend, and God really blessed me with this friendship. She's one of my best friends. Her name is Lo. And she, like on the third time that we ever met, we went to dinner together, and she said that God put me on her heart to give me $2,500 to move into my new apartment. And so talk about miracle, you guys. This girl that I had just met gave me $2,500, and she said, God wants to give you this for your new apartment. So that is how I moved into that apartment. That is how I was able to buy or pay for my first month's rent. And I got lucky because when I moved into that apartment, it had 2 months rent free once you move in. So you pay the first month and then you get 2 months rent free. So I was like, okay, I'm good for 3 months without paying rent. But while I was in that apartment, God was teaching me, he was teaching me just how to steward my time wisely. Because he was like, okay, I'm gonna provide 3 months of rent for you, Alicia, but what are you gonna do now that you don't need finances right now? Are you still gonna pray? Are you still gonna make videos? Are you still gonna walk into your assignment? Are you still gonna do all these things that I asked you to do? But he also taught me in other ways. So he was teaching me how to show up even when I was inconvenienced. Because I don't know if you guys were following me on social media at the time, but this was a brand new apartment complex, and it was very new, under construction. Like, my apartment building wasn't even done yet. I don't even know if that's legal, but like they were still doing drillings and things on the roof, like above my ceiling. Like, I lived on the top floor, so I paid extra to even live on this top floor. And they did not tell me that the attic was actually above my apartment unit, the attic. So they were drilling, they were sawing, all of their equipment was literally in my attic on top of my roof, and they ended up drilling a hole in my ceiling. Okay, I am not joking. They literally drilled a hole in my ceiling, and it started leaking, and my entire apartment in my room was soaking wet. The carpet, my bed, like and I'm just like, is this? And I woke up at like 4 in the morning with water droplets on my face, and I was like, is this a joke? And you guys, this happened for like 2 months in a row, like constant anxiety and construction. Like, I never slept. And I know that this was also God testing me, but it was like the enemy like did not want me to work, like, because I would wake up the next morning and I'm like, I don't feel like working, I don't feel like making a video, I don't feel like doing ministry stuff, I don't feel like posting this prophetic word. And I fell into this like slump because I wasn't sleeping, and I felt extremely exhausted. But God was teaching me how to show up even when I was inconvenienced. And I really truly felt like that 3 to 4 month period in that apartment, because I signed like a 14-month lease. And I'll tell you how I even got out of the apartment, thank God, by God's grace. But he used that season to test me. And it was kind of like my Gethsemane, of like when Jesus was in Gethsemane, and he was like, you know, Father, take this cup away from me, but he still had to go to the cross. He still had to show up. He still had to move forward. And that's exactly what God was teaching me in that little season of that apartment complex, was still show up even when you are inconvenienced, even when you don't want to. And so not only was he teaching me how to work even when I was inconvenienced, but he was teaching me how to trust him to provide for me. Because even though my rent was taken care of, I still had like $2,500 to almost $3,000 worth in bills, not even including rent. My car payment and my credit cards from like my past worldly life, my dog, vet bills, food, insurance, like all cell phone bill, like all these things. My bills were already so high, and God was training me to trust him. And I have seen him do such miraculous things in providing for my finances. And he was also teaching me how to deal with people who were rude and insensitive, because the people that were at my apartment complex, every single time I would complain to them saying like, hey guys, this is not acceptable. Like, I can't live in something that is so unbearable and unlivable. They're drilling through my roof, they're doing construction, and they would always say like, it's in the construction addendum. But nowhere did it say in the construction addendum that there was going to be drilling on my roof. They never told me that there was going to be an attic above me. They have to tell you stuff like that. They never told me that construction people were going to be on my balcony while I'm in my living room. Like, so many things were happening, and there were times, you guys, that I literally had to pack a bag and go sleep at friends' houses for literally like a week at a time because I just could not deal with the noise. And so my life was constantly chaotic, constantly just noisy, and I talk about God testing me. I literally just wrote a devotional yesterday about where do you put your faith, and right now I'm being tested in so many ways right now. My apartment complex is falling apart. There's a roof in my leak. I have $200 in my account, can't even pay I'm a week late on my car payment. Have to go somewhere to sleep because I can't even sleep in my place because they're doing construction work on the ceiling. Can't do anything right now. And on top of that, I'm in a court case. Like, God is truly testing me right now, because I just wrote a devotional yesterday about where do you put your faith, and right now everything is literally falling apart. But I still trust God. I still trust God that he's going to come through. I still believe that he is good, and I still believe that you are attacked this hard right before the biggest breakthrough, and I believe that breakthrough is coming. I really believe it in my spirit that breakthrough is coming. That breakthrough is coming. Victory is coming. God is going to restore everything that I lost in this year from everything that the locusts ate. And I just am making this video for a living testimony for when God does come through, and I feel like it's happening soon. And today is December 6th. I haven't slept literally all night long because people were drilling through my roof starting at 6 a.m. and woke up with literally dripping water from my ceiling onto my bed, onto my carpet. And I would be so like upset with God, because I'm like, God, I know you moved me here. I know you gave me the funds to move here. So why is all of these things happening? And then next thing you know, you guys, there was break-ins into my apartment, like not actually in the apartments, but like break-ins in cars. Like, I had a friend that would come over all the time and their car would continuously get broken into twice. My friend actually had to get a brand new car because they literally ruined my friend's car to try to steal it. And so this just kept happening, and I'm just like, God, what in the world? Like, why would you allow me to move somewhere where I felt unsafe? Why would you allow me to move somewhere that just seems so chaotic and noisy? So anyways, that's the background story, because I needed to put that in context for what God did, okay? Because God planned all of this. God planned all of this. And so every single week I was fasting and praying, being like, God, am I supposed to stay here? Because it just didn't seem like it was adding up. I'm like, God, make this make sense. Like, you want me to do ministry, you want me to post YouTube videos, but I couldn't even make videos because the construction was so insane. Like, it would overpower my voice. But there were days, you guys, and mornings where I would have to wake up early. I would have to go to my apartment complex like clubhouse to make a video. I would have to go sit in my car when it was freezing cold and when it was snowing in Asheville. I had to do all of these things. I had to drive to a coffee shop, but God was teaching me work ethic, and God was teaching me how to show up when I was being inconvenienced, and how to work through the noise, and how to work through all the obstacles. He was teaching me also how to deal with the people that were at my apartment complex that I thought were very rude and insensitive. They did not care what I was going through. I would cry to them. I would send them email after email, and they just didn't care. They were just like, sorry. And so like I had to go up higher up to corporate and message them, and finally I just became a nuisance to them. I don't like to create problems, but at this point, like, this was my living situation, and I'm just like, I can't actually live in a place that is so unbearable, and now it's unsafe, and now there's so much construction noise. So when all of this was going on, so I had moved in there in September, and all of this started happening in December. So literally I had only been there for like 2 months, you guys. And I'm like, okay, this can't go on. Like, and I just kept complaining and complaining and complaining. And by the way, you guys, when God is shifting, let this just serve as confirmation. Maybe you're in a place where you're like, okay, you felt like God was moving you somewhere, which I know God did move me there, which I'll get into that. But when God has you in a place, it might be to test you, it might be to train you, it might be to teach you a lesson or whatever it is. But when you know that God is shifting you out of a place that he doesn't want you in anymore, problems will arise. Maybe you live with a roommate and there will be constant arguments and disagreements with your roommate, fights with your roommates. Maybe things around the house or apartment will keep breaking. Like that continued to happen in my place. Like my computer chair would break, or my light fixtures, like just things kept just started breaking, and there will just be constant problems, always needing something to be fixed, and it will just feel unlivable and unbearable, and you'll just have something in your spirit that's like doesn't sit right. Like you will lose your creativity. It just doesn't seem inspiring anymore. And yeah, so like for example, how it'll also feel unsafe where for example, when all of a sudden break-ins in cars were happening in my apartment complex, and it just felt unsafe, and the noise of the construction was unbearable, and there were just nights that I didn't even sleep, nights that I had to sleep at friends' houses, and it was just awful. And I kept complaining to them, and finally I was like, okay, I've had enough. After they drilled a hole through the roof, and then my roof was leaking, and they got scared because I went to corporate, and so they ended up giving me a free month of rent. Like God allowed all of that noise to happen because I was so worried. I'm like, okay, God, like this is the last month of free rent. December was the last month of free rent. How am I gonna pay my rent in January? And they gave me an entire month of free rent because of all the noise and the inconvenience. And so I was like, okay, I'll stay here till January, but like after January 31st, God, like there's no way I'm staying here. So when this leak happened, I told the leasing people, no way was I staying in that apartment. And they said that they would allow me out of because they were so tired of me complaining. And they were like, you know what? We're gonna allow you out of your lease scratch free. We'll give you your deposit back, like just here. And then they made me sign an NDA because they didn't want me to go and talk badly about this apartment complex company, and which I still won't. I'm not gonna mention the names, but I was just like, wow, they are trying to save their butts because they knew that this was not unlivable, or they knew that this was not okay. This was against so many things. They could literally get sued for what kind of apartment complex I lived in, and you're not supposed to live in an unfinished apartment building. Like the stairs sometimes weren't even done, like the elevator wasn't even working, the handrails of the staircases weren't even put into the wall. Like it was just crazy. But it was all a lesson. God taught me there. God put me there to train me. In January, I did 21 days of fasting and prayer and kept praying where God wanted me to move. And by faith, I was like, okay, God, I'm going to go and look for another apartment, but I don't know if you're telling me to move, but like by faith, I'm just gonna do it. So I started going on to all these different apartment tours, and each time no door opens. Like I didn't have the finances for some of them. I didn't have enough money in my bank account to have like 3 times the rent. Some of them didn't allow pets. Like there's just so many things, and I just knew God was not wanting me to sign another lease somewhere. Like I just felt in my spirit like God was telling me not to sign another lease. And so like I told you how the apartment complex, after they gave me 1 month rent free, they're like, do you still want to live here? Because if you don't, we need to know at least 30 days in advance. So I needed to notify them sometime in January. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna stay here anymore. And so I felt God tell me, yeah, your time here is done. And if there's a video that I posted maybe a couple of months ago of why God had even moved me there, I know the reason why God moved me there was to train me, to humble me, to test me, and all of that. But I actually ended up praying for someone who was Muslim, and I really feel like God just used me to plant a seed in their life. And funny enough, how when I finally moved out of that apartment complex, the guy that I had prayed for, he had worked at my apartment complex. That's how I was even able to get in. He worked in my apartment complex, and the day that I moved out, the day after, he got fired. So it was like God allowed me to go there and pray for him and to test me and to humble me and all of the things. And then when God closes the door and he says, this is the end of this season, this is the end of this chapter, God is going to move things quickly, and then God will start to give you instructions. So if you have been waiting on God and you haven't heard specific instructions on what to do, do not move. You cannot go before him because it will not work out like that. Wait for the Lord. Wait for him to give you instructions, okay? Because if it was up to me, I would have moved out of that apartment complex 2 months prior, after the first month of like all the construction. But I waited on God, and thank God I did, because God's timing is perfect. So during the January of fasting and prayer, I was making bold prayers. I was saying, God, I feel like you are shifting me to move somewhere else, but show me, Lord, where are you moving me? Even when I packed and put stuff in boxes from my apartment, I wrote on my boxes, God, where are you moving me to? And funny how that became prophetic later on. But so right after I prayed that prayer, which by the way, let me read you something in my journals, okay? So I was writing every single day to God about, God, I need clarity on what to do. So I wrote this in the beginning of January, and I said, the construction people on my roof again at 8:30 this morning. I really need clarity on what God wants me to do. Number one, do I move into another unit but stay here in this apartment complex? Number two, do I stay here and suck it up because God has his reasons? Or number three, do I put my stuff in storage and move out and find another place? Until I hear from you clearly, God, I'm going to stay here. I just hope and pray for these 21 days that this will be bearable, since I won't be able to leave to go anywhere since I'm fasting and it's freezing. Because this is when it was snowing. There were snowstorms in Nashville. And I was just like, God, I don't know what you want me to do. And I just kept praying. I was like, God, I need clarity on still living in this apartment living situation. Do I stay or do I go? And God ended up answering me during those 21 days of fasting and prayer. So when I was viewing all these apartment complexes and nothing was working, I took that as a sign that God was telling me to wait, and I didn't want to be impulsive. So I moved all of my stuff out and moved everything into a friend of mine's place and kept all of my stuff in my friend's office space and slept on their couch for about a month. And during that time, you guys, I was like, I don't even know what is going on. And if you're in ministry, this is just part of the journey, you guys. So just buckle up and embrace it, because everyone that I talk to, all my friends who I know that are in ministry, they have the same process. And it's just part of the process. It's even a part of the Israelites process when God was testing them, humbling them, making them go hungry, and then feeding them manna. It's a part of the process. So just embrace it and enjoy the process. But during that time, I was fasting and praying multiple times, even after the 21 days of fasting and prayer. But during that time, I'm on my friend's couch for about a month. I fasted and prayed multiple times for God to give me clarity on what to do. I knew in my spirit that he was moving me somewhere else, but I did not know where. I had no idea. I had no places. I had no location in mind. I just felt in my spirit that God was saying, do not sign another lease. So as I continued to pray about this, and I was like, okay, God, I know you're sending me somewhere else. Where are you sending me? And Isaiah 6:8, the verse just kept popping up. It says, also, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, who shall I send and who will go for us? Then I said, here I am, Lord, send me. And that verse just kept popping up, and I'm like, okay, God, where are you sending me? I even wrote that at the top of my journals every single day. I'm like, Lord, where are you sending me? Where are you sending me? I knew God was speaking to me, but I had no idea. So right after I was praying these prayers, all of a sudden I would be on Instagram, and I would be watching Instagram stories, and so many people on my Instagram stories started posting about being in Dallas. And multiple people, like 5 different people on the same day and during that week. And these people did not even know each other. They didn't know who each other were. And so I just kept all of that in the back of my mind and was like, okay, I'll take note of that, God, but you're gonna have to confirm that. You're gonna have to confirm that and give me more, because I needed to make sure that this was not just some kind of coincidence. I'm like, God, like, if you're sending me to Dallas, make it clear. And then as I continued to pray specifically more about Dallas, God really started to speak up and show up. So that Sunday, I didn't end up going to church, and instead I watched it online, and I just felt pulled to watch a different pastor than my church home in Nashville. And I was watching a sermon by Jensen Franklin, who is based in Georgia. And of course, that morning that I decided to watch church, he had a guest speaker, and I was kind of like, oh dang, I really wanted to watch Jensen, but he had a guest speaker. And God planned this, because the guest speaker for that day was Pastor Robert Morris from Gateway Church. And guess where he's based? Dallas. If I had gone to church that morning, I wouldn't have even gotten that confirmation, because God led me to that moment on purpose, because he knew that would be a confirmation to what I was praying for. And I'm like, why does this church sound so familiar? Like, I'm like, I've never been to Gateway Church, but I'm like, I felt like that was like talked about recently. Like a friend of mine had said that, and I'm like, why does that sound so familiar? Like, I feel like I've heard that church mentioned recently. So I type it in my phone text to see if it pops up anywhere. And of course, it's because a girlfriend of mine had just been visiting Dallas. She doesn't even live in the United States. She lives in Switzerland, but she was visiting the United States and was in Dallas. And she had told me, she's like, oh, I just checked out Gateway Church, and guess who their guest speaker was for that church? She's like, oh, I went to go see Pastor Robert Morris, and they had a guest speaker, and it was Jensen Franklin. So full circle. But I was like, oh, that's why that church sounded familiar. And right after she told me that she was at Gateway Church, she was in Dallas, she sends me a photo of my last name on a street name in Dallas. It said Cummings. And she just happened to send me that. But like, that was months and weeks prior to me praying if I'm supposed to move to Dallas. But God saved that revelation for that moment and brought it back to my remembrance to remember. And I was scrolling through my text and I saw that she, right under the gateway text, was a photo that she sent me that said my last name, and she was in Dallas. And I'm like, okay, now God is really speaking. So I'll pop in the photo somewhere because I have screenshots of these. But that's when I knew God was speaking. Then this gets crazy, okay? Then y'all, that same day, that same exact day, literally the same day, I was driving, thinking of this move. I had so much on my mind, and I was just like pondering all of this. And as I'm driving, a semi truck was behind me, and I look in the rear view mirror, and it's perfectly positioned in my mirror, and it says new beginnings. And I knew it was God prophetically speaking, giving me a message. So I kept that in the back of my mind. And then I get home and I came across a prophetic video that came across my YouTube page. Didn't search this or anything. It was just popped up on my page. But I knew God was confirming his word because it was titled, "A New Beginning is Near." And in her video, the girl that made this video was wearing a Dallas shirt. And in her video, she talks about God is sending you a new address. You are about to move. This is a new beginning. And she's wearing a Dallas shirt. And God just showed me a new beginning in the semi truck in my rearview mirror. And I'm just like, okay, God, now I hear you. You have got my attention and you're making this very clear. And that, okay, so this was February 26th. Remember the dates because this goes in order. That was February 26th. So I had been at on my friend's couch for about a little over 3 weeks. And so God started giving me these signs probably around February 20th when I was watching Instagram stories about Dallas and then seeing it at church. But so then I see a new beginning, and that was like a couple of days later, February 26th. So less than a month that I moved out of my apartment, I was like, God started really speaking. 21 days of fasting and prayer, you guys, like I'm telling you, you will not get your revelations during your fast. Sometimes you do, but most of the time it comes afterwards, and God really started to show up. And so I continued to keep waiting on God because I had no idea when I was supposed to go, how I was supposed to go. I still didn't have the finances. I didn't know anyone in Dallas, but I just continued to trust God that he would give me the instructions, because if God is telling you to go somewhere, best believe he will give you the instructions. So March 8th, so like 2 weeks later, because remember that was February 26th, 2 weeks later, like on March 8th, by faith, I just started posting on Facebook Marketplace. I was posting on OfferUp. I was posting on all these places to sell my furniture that had been sitting in my friend's like office space. And I had so much stuff, but nothing was selling. Like days went by, another few days went by, and nothing was selling. I would lower the prices and nothing. And I'm like, okay, God, if you are telling me to move, my furniture has to sell, because I was banking on that to give me the money to move to Dallas. Because I'm like, God, how am I going to make the money to move to Dallas? Like I needed to sell that furniture and I was needing that money to move. And I was trying every place to sell it, but had no luck. But God was testing my faith. And so during this time, I kept seeing multiple, like I wasn't seeking these videos out. They would just randomly pop up on my YouTube homepage because of the algorithm, but there were all these prophetic videos about moving. And I knew it was confirmation because of what God was already speaking to me about. And I started to get confused because I'm like, okay, God, why is none of my furniture selling if you want me to move? And then I saw another prophetic word on my homepage that day, and it was titled, God says to make room. It's time to go. And it was such confirmation because I didn't know what stuff to keep or what stuff to sell. I had no idea what things that I would need in this move. Like, do I take my kitchen stuff? Do I take my mattress? Do I just get a U-Haul and move everything with me? But then I'm like, who's gonna drive my car? So many questions, you guys, that I had, and I really needed clarity from God. But then this video was such confirmation because she said, God will provide everything you need in this move. Get rid of the old to make room for the new. And so then I made a bold prayer, which I wrote in my phone notes that day, literally that day. So backstory, you guys, if you have been following me for a while, you know my testimony of how God saved me from a very bad toxic relationship and toxic and abusive relationship. And for the last 2 years, literally as I make this video, for the last 2 years, I was in a 2-year court case with my ex who lived in Austin. That's where I dated him, and that's where I used to live before God moved moved me to Nashville. So I know for a fact this was only God to tell me to move to Dallas, because Texas was the last place I wanted to move. And the prayer I wrote, I'll pop in the photo somewhere over here, but I said, this is a prayer that I made to God. This was like a declaration that I made to God. And I said, God, if I get the money from this court case, I will move immediately. Let that be the sign when to go, Lord. Let that be the sign, Lord. I need your instructions, God. All I know is Dallas. I have no other plans or knowing of anything besides get rid of my stuff and sell it. But I need that to happen. I haven't even told my mom yet, Lord. Help give me wisdom on how and when to share that. I only want to share when I know for sure. And then this is where God showed up. 3 days later, March 11th, because remember that was March 8th. 3 days later, March 11th, God gave me the unction to post on a Dallas Facebook group looking for a roommate. And I have never had a roommate in years. I haven't had a roommate since I probably when I lived in LA, I had a roommate with my best friend at the time, but I haven't had a roommate since then, and that was like 5 years ago. And so I was like, God, you really want me to live in a roommate? Like, how am I gonna do my videos? Like, I was so worried about that, but like, I just felt in my spirit that God was like, I want you to live with a roommate. So by faith, I went on this Facebook, like New Girls to Dallas Facebook group, and I posted a post. And by the way, I have never done this in my entire life, so this was so out of my comfort zone. I'm like, okay, this is the only option. If God is telling me to do this, then he's gonna open a door. So by faith, I prayed and I posted it. And I said, okay, God, I'm not going to message anyone. That's just weird to me. But let a door open and let someone message me who is a Christian, and just let it be the perfect opportunity. Let this be a divine connection. And I posted like all of the things that I was looking for: my own room, my own bathroom, what my budget was, and what I was looking for. So I did what I could do. I did exactly what only I could do, and I left the rest up to God for him to move. And you guys, literally the next day, I know I said that, that's like my, literally the next day, March 12th, a girl commented on my post telling me to message her, and that she was looking for a roommate in her brand new townhome. That's where I'm at now. In her brand new townhome in a new gated community, and she adds that it's fully furnished. So I messaged her to get the details, and she tells me she was also looking for someone. She tells me that she was also looking for someone with a dog, because she has a dog. And I had a dog, and she wasn't even charging extra or pet fees or anything. And she tells me I don't need to bring anything, because I was asking her, I'm like, hey, so I have so much furniture, like, should I sell my stuff? Like, should I bring kitchen stuff? Like, what are the things that I need to bring? And she goes, girl, don't bring anything. I have everything. The guest room that I have is fully furnished. You have a dresser, you have a mirror, you have a bed, you have sheets, you have comforters. I have a fully stocked kitchen, pots, pans, cups, bowls, whatever you need, I have. You do not need to bring anything, and everything's fully furnished. And to add in the God story part, she tells me how she was going through a breakup. And you guys know that I'm a relationship coach, and I help people heal from heartbreak. And I was just like texting her all of these things, and I was just amazed. And she's like, I'm crying at work. And like, I was like, okay, God, this is what you want me to do. And God told me I was gonna move in with her, and that was my next assignment, that I was going to help her, and that I was going to be a vessel for God's glory and to help her. That God was used me as a vessel to help her through this breakup. And so I'm just like amazed, and I get all this information from her. She sends me all these photos, she sends me videos, and I told her, even though I already knew that I was gonna probably move in, I said, hey, let me get back to you. I'm gonna pray on this, because I needed to pray on when I would be able to move there, because remember, I still didn't have the finances, so I didn't want to commit to a date and then be like, okay, I don't know how I'm gonna get the finances to move, because remember, my furniture still hasn't sold, so I don't even have the money from that yet. I don't have the money from the court case that I've been in. And by the way, I was praying every day on my knees for that court case to end, and I wasn't relying on that, but you know, pray about everything. God says pray about everything. So I just happened to pray this bold prayer, and I'll say, God, let this be the sign. If that court case closes and I get the money, because my ex owed me thousands of dollars, if I get this money, let that be the sign, Lord. I will move immediately. I will trust you, and I will move immediately. This is where God blew my mind. No one can tell me that God isn't real. This is where God blew my mind. Are you guys ready for this? So the next day, literally the next day, March 13th, I fasted and prayed about this the whole day, because I'm like, okay, God, I really need you to come through. You've opened this door now. By faith, I did all these things. By faith, I'm still trying to sell my furniture. By faith, I posted on this Dallas Facebook group. This girl wants me to move in with her, fully furnished. Like, come on, what is, like, this is living proof, you guys. This is living proof. I'm in a fully furnished 3-story townhome, you guys. In just weeks prior, I was living in a very like small 1-bedroom apartment, not being able to pay my rent. God is so good, okay? God is so good, and he is so strategic. But this is where he blew my mind. So the next day, I'm fasting and praying the entire day. And as I'm in, not before, not after, as I'm in worship, I don't know what's going on in my life, you guys. I'm so confused. I don't know, God, you're moving. I start worshiping, because worship and praise is your weapon. It is your weapon. It is how God will move. Things in the spirit will move. As I'm in worship, praying and singing, I get an email, not even a call, an email from the court case people saying my ex was willing to pay the money and to just be done with the case, and I don't have to go to court. I don't have to do anything. He's ready to pay the money, and and the check will be sent out in a few days. What? Normally, I have been, for the last 2 years, I've been on the phone with these court case people. Like, they don't just randomly close the case and just email me, but they decided to just email me, and they're like, hey, he wants to close the court case. We're sending out the check. It's already written. They already sent the money to the office, and it'll be mailed to you in the next few days. What, you guys? I can't make this up. I can't make this up. I can't make this up. Okay? And so I was so moved in tears, because as I'm praying, as I'm worshiping on my friend's couch, not knowing what I'm gonna do, not knowing how I'm gonna move, not knowing how I'm gonna get the finances, God moved like that. My court case was closed 2 years later. 2 years later. 2 years later. God is so good. He is an on-time God. His timing never fails. Never fails. He delayed the money for a purpose, because I kept saying, God, why do I not have this money? It's been 2 years, Lord. I've been fasting and praying for this. But you know what? He allowed the delay for this time now. And thank God he did not give me the money sooner. You know why? Because I would have used that money to sign another apartment lease in Nashville. And God knew that if he would have given me that money, I would have signed another apartment lease with that money. I would have probably bought more furniture for my house. And God knew that until he gave me the instructions of what to do, then he can give me the money. Because now he knew that I would use that money for the purpose of where he was taking me. Oh, this is just like, God is so good. He delayed the money for a reason. And then I would have been out of money and not have even been able to move. God's delays are strategic, you guys. And so then, you know, the court people said that they would send the check in the mail in a few days. And I know, like, with the justice system, they don't get things done fast, but I just continued to trust God that it would get sent on time so I could move that month. So this was in March. This was like, remember I told you, like March 12th, March 13th. And I'm like, I really wanted to move that month. I didn't want to sit on my friend's couch for much longer. And I was like, okay, I want to move this month. And so I still did not know the date on when I was going to move, because I'm kind of waiting on this check, but I prayed about the date. God says to pray about everything, you guys. Your prayers are never too small. They're never too dumb. They're never too specific. God wants to answer you. And I prayed about everything. I was like, God, give me a date. When is the date that you want me to move? Because I also had to know that I had to wait for my check. And so I just kept continuing to pray about this date, and I just kept seeing March 22nd everywhere for some reason. Like, I would see it on expiration dates. I would just see it, like, I would just see March 22nd everywhere. And this was only like March 13th at the time. And so then I came across another prophetic video, and she said, God says you need to move March 22nd. So I just took that as confirmation. I'm like, okay, because God had already been showing me that. So then I see it in the video. I'm like, okay. And so I got back to the girl about moving into her place, and I said, hey, I'm gonna move in March 22nd. And so a week goes by. I'm still in Nashville. I'm still on my friend's couch. A week goes by and still no check. And now I'm getting worried, because I'm getting worried because none of my furniture has sold. And by this time, it's like I have a week left to move. A week left. And I already told her, I already signed the lease. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting nervous. And I'm just like, okay, God, I need my furniture to sell, and I need this check to come. But I still trusted that God led me and gave me instructions. Up to that point, he's going to continue to provide for me and give me more instructions. And so during this time, all of a sudden, left and right, people were buying my furniture. Like I sold like 6 things in one day, like my mattress, my comforter, my bed frame, like all these things, all the big things that I really needed. All of a sudden people were buying my furniture left and right. God, sometimes he waits to the last minute, but he is never early, never late, always on time. And I sold, okay, so remember how I said I was gonna move March 22nd? I sold the last piece of furniture literally March 21st at like 8 p.m. I sold the last piece of furniture. God is always on time. And every single thing, you guys, got sold. Everything down to my Tupperware containers. Like at this point when I had like little things of kitchen stuff left, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna give this to my friend, or I'm just gonna throw them away, or I'm just gonna whatever. I sold every little thing down to my spatula sets and got sold. Every single thing. I was able to get rid of everything. So I had enough money to get there and to pay her the prorated amount of rent for March, but I didn't have enough to pay come April 1st. And like I told you guys, ministry is living off of faith every single month, but God has never failed me for the past year and a half that I've been in ministry. So listen to how crazy this is, you guys. March 22nd, I drive to Dallas. I get there and this house is literally like a mansion, okay? It looks like a Restoration Hardware inside with the nicest furniture. Everything is decorated and I'm like, this is only God. Like I remember walking in and I was like, this is only God. He wasn't lying when he said that he's taking me to the next level in my promised land. So 7 days later, March 29th, okay? I emailed the court people because I still have no check. So I was getting the check sent to my parents' permanent address in Florida, and then my mom was gonna mail me the check because I knew that since I was leaving Nashville, I didn't want the check to come after I was gonna be gone, and then I couldn't get it. So I'm like, I just gave them my parents' address. So I'm asking my mom every day, I'm like, oh, is this check coming in? Is the check coming in? She's like, no, sweetie, the check hasn't come in yet. So March 29th, I still have no check. I emailed the court people. And I'm asking where this check is still. And they said they mailed it out that day. March 29th, they mailed it out that day. So I'm kind of fretting because I'm like, okay, that's not gonna be at my parents' house by April 1st. And then my mom still has to mail it to me, but I still trusted God that he would make a way. Tell me how. April 1st, the day that I had to pay this girl rent, my roommate. April 1st, I get the check in the mail. I get the check in the mail on April 1st, y'all. The money and blessings came as I stepped out in faith and obedience. God will always provide when you are being obedient. And since I've been here in Dallas for the last month and a half, it's been nothing but blessings and open doors and new connections. My roommate has become a friend of mine. I've met so many new divine connections. God really blessed me because of my obedience and because of my faith. God is so good, y'all. So I just hope and pray that this encourages you and strengthens your faith to trust God. If he is telling you to move, he will make sure that you have everything you need. This place was fully furnished. I didn't need to bring a single thing. And it's only God. Most people, when they get a roommate, it's like you have to buy your own furniture or you move into a place that's empty. No, this place was already set up. A brand new 3-story townhome, fully furnished, stocked and loaded. And I didn't have to bring a single thing. So there is a timing, you guys. There is a reason, there is a purpose for when God tells you to move. Take the leap of faith and trust him. God's instructions come from taking action. As you begin to take a step, God begins to speak. I could have easily not taken a step and been like, I'm just gonna wait for my check. But no, God has given me the faith because of what he's done for me in Nashville. That's why I have the faith that I have now, because God tested me and trained me and humbled me in Nashville to have the faith that, you know what, if God tells me instructions, I'm gonna trust him. I'm not gonna rely on my circumstances of not having enough finances, not my furniture not selling, not having my check from the court case people to move. How am I gonna pay? God blessed me with the money after I already got here. Because God is so good. He's such a good father. And so as you begin to walk, God begins to move. God begins to move as you take a step. And so as you begin to walk, God begins to open doors. And as I began to take the necessary steps, like posting my furniture to sell or posting on the Facebook group for a roommate, God began to open doors. And that's when my court case closed for the money. Your action comes before God's blessings. That's a word. Your action comes before God's blessings. God, I promise you, you guys, I'm a living testimony. God will never fail you. He will never fail you. I have seen him do this in my life time and time again, and has never failed to provide for me or not give me what I needed. Dallas was the third faith move that I've made since walking with the Lord. And every time I have seen him do miraculous things, I like to call these glory setups, because sometimes God will position you for a glory setup. He will position you to a place where you're like, I don't know how you're gonna do this, Lord. I don't know how my car payment's gonna be made when I'm 2 months rent. God, I don't know how I'm gonna move into this place with $1 in my bank account. Some days I had $1 in my bank account, you guys, like a couple months ago. But God does that. He positions you for a glory setup, because then you will know that it was only by the grace of God, it was only by the hand of God that he did what he did. So that is all I have for you guys. Thank you guys for watching if you're still here until the end. But if you are needing guidance, or if you are needing godly counsel, I offer one-on-one mentorship calls. It has been such a blessing to other sisters in Christ who have been looking to move. I have done, hundreds of these mentorship calls. So if you feel led, pray about it first. If you feel led, the link to book a call with me is in the description box. Pray about it, and if you feel led, book a call with me. But I just pray that this video blessed you and encouraged you if God is telling you to move, or maybe this video, maybe God's not telling you to move, and maybe God's telling you to do something else, but you just happen to watch this video and is encouraging you to just trust God for what he's telling you to do. Just believe what he's telling you to do. Trust the instructions, follow and be obedient, and watch God open doors for you that you could have never opened yourself. And if this video has blessed you and you feel led to sow into the ministry, the links to donate will also be in the description box, or they will be pinned in the comments. Any seed, big or small, is so appreciated and helps support the ministry. So I love you guys so much, and Jesus loves you. God bless you, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.